even further, I found that verse I was talking about last week. Though it doesn't say exactly what I thought it did, it is pretty close. It's actually the end of James chapter 1. Pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you. So it doesn't, just to correct past John, it doesn't actually say outright that God loves religion, but it does give an idea of religion that God approves of. It's completely irrelevant to the rest of the sermon. Just wanted to fact check myself. Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought that said 111. It does say 111. It's just not supposed to. Good morning. Yeah, I know it's. They were my notes that were written at 10:30 last night, okay? It's hard to see in the dark. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Continuing, or kind of starting the series on James this morning. Seamless transition, totally, from Abraham. James is a person of interest for a couple different reasons to me. One of which we're going to get right to, though it, again, doesn't have a lot of bearing on the rest of the sermon. James chapter 1, verse 1, "This letter is from James, a slave of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ. I am writing to the 12 tribes, Jewish believers scattered abroad. Greetings." Lord God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together and study your word today, that I would have only the words to speak that you want me to speak, and that you would be with us all. Thank you. Amen. And then, going right ahead, verse 2, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come our way, or your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy." And that's the first thing that sticks out to me from James, because so much of our New Testament was written by Paul, who likes his introductions. When you read a book of Paul, basically the entire first chapter is him saying hello. He always feels the need to restate who he is, exactly what the Christian faith is, who he's writing to, and why. All in basically his introduction, his first greeting. James seems a lot more direct, a lot more blunt and to the point, as it were. It's just, hi, hello, how you doing? And immediately launches into the message of his letter. It's perhaps just a small thing, but it paints a different picture of James. Almost as if he has less to prove, as it were, than Paul does. I don't remember at the moment if this is James the brother of Christ or James the apostle. I'm not even sure if they were the same person or not. I believe they were two different. This is his brother, isn't it?
I think so.
If this is his brother, then this is someone who grew up with Jesus. If this is the Apostle James, this is someone who just spent the last however many years with Jesus. Either way, this man doesn't have nearly as much to prove to his audience as Paul does. A man who spent a lot of time running around persecuting the Christian church. Whichever James this is, he was there from day one. He would be a known and accepted figure in the young Christian faith. So he doesn't need to spend a whole lot of time restating who he is and why he's writing, because his audience would already know who he is. But into the meat of his message here, what he's here to say. When troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. That's our great joy right there. It's not a unique hallmark to the Christian faith, but one of our bigger differences between us and a majority of other people, regardless of their beliefs, is a Christian's ability to endure suffering and persecution. It's certainly not unique. We don't want to overstate things. There's plenty of Buddhists or Confucius or whatever throughout history who have used their ability to endure hard times as a witness for their faith. The obvious and famous example is Gandhi. He suffered a whole lot at the hands of the British Empire to prove a point, and he most certainly was not a practicing Protestant, as it were. But we are particularly good at it, at our ability to count it as great joy when troubles come our way. It actually gets us in a lot of trouble back in this day and age especially. The Jewish faith in people was actually not fully accepted by the Roman Empire, but they weren't really that hated for the most part. They weren't really frowned upon. Simply put, because the Jewish faith and culture believed in fighting back and defending themselves. When you invade and conquer Jerusalem, they'd still put up a fight. It didn't work for them, see AD 70, but they still made the attempt. They could still be respected and accepted by the warrior, military-focused culture of the Roman Empire. Christians, in their weird ideology of not standing up for themselves, of turning the other cheek, and just generally being much more pacifistic, is in a lot of cases what got them thrown to lions in the first place, because Romans didn't respect anyone who didn't defend themselves. So, it's not the point. I'm not saying you should go out and pick fights or you'll get fed to lions. That's not the idea here. It's just an interesting cultural note. Moving on, verse 3. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. It's an interesting proposition that you should learn to appreciate and enjoy hard times because they prepare you to deal with hard times. One would be awfully tempted to just hope that you didn't have to endure tough stuff to begin with, but of course that's not how the real world works. Life comes with pain and sorrow regardless of who you are, where you are, and what you do. Rains on the just and the unjust alike. So James is commanding his audience to use their faith to their benefit. That Christians are not unique in their ability to endure troubled times, but are perhaps unique in their ability to grow stronger because of it. When your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. And when it is fully grown, it brings forth perfection, which is pretty strong words. It's quite a statement to give, that you will achieve perfection through patience, as it were. Just learning to accept difficulties, learn from them, and use that to become a better person. It's a hard lesson, and I don't think it's one that any of us particularly like to learn. But, I mean, if life is going to be hard anyways, you might as well get something out of it, right? Skipping down to verse 9 to continue this general theme here. Believers who are poor have something to boast about, for God has honored them. It's completely alien, almost, to our particular culture, not the warrior militant Roman Empire, but the much sneakier, insidious, almost mercantile empire that is America. That would much rather rule you through our ability to just have more money than you than any great feat on the battlefield. Our golden arches and Coca-Cola are worldwide, as it were. So for such a money-focused society, it is perhaps unfathomable for James to revere the poor first. But it kind of goes back to what we read in James chapter 2 last week, that the Christian faith is no respecter of persons. That when compared to the creator God of the universe, all of us kind of look pretty shabby by comparison. So the believers who are poor have something to boast about, for God has honored them. It's hard to see being broke as being honored, but it really is. I keep getting a headline on my phone. I would really like to ask Google's algorithm how it decides which news stories to repeat to me, because this is one that I've had for like a week now. Experts have come out and said that there is a tie between religion and being poor. Now, I don't know what they mean by that, but whatever they mean by that, it's not exactly newsworthy, is it? It's... There are, 3-4 cases in the Gospels themselves of rich men giving up wealth or being told to give up wealth to follow God? And who is more likely to become religious than someone who doesn't have anything else to rely on? If you're poor, what are you going to turn to? You can't turn to your money, obviously. You can't turn to yourself. You don't really have a lot of options left but to pray and hope for the best. I just might disagree with modern experts, using the term loosely, that is an inherently bad thing. That the tribal villager who has no idea where his next meal is coming from actually lives a significantly worse life than we do. I'll admit he's probably way less comfortable and his life expectancy ain't so great, but I have a hard time believing he's less happy. But that might just be because I've never been truly poor. They say that China at the moment is having a immigration issue of their own, namely everyone from the backwards, I shouldn't say backwards, I didn't mean to, for the record, backwoods, farming, agriculture, rural kind of area are fleeing en masse to the city, because even when it's horrifically long, brutal, unsafety regulated shifts at a factory, apparently they still think that's better because it comes with some electricity and indoor plumbing, which apparently beats working on a farm. Who knew? I've never worked on a farm, so I couldn't tell you that either. It's just interesting for God to place honor on someone who's poor. And he does. That person down the street who's never had a dime to his name, who life has treated hard, who has bad luck after bad luck, and is still breathing, still kicking, still well fed, whose family doesn't have much, but has a roof over their heads, and who has accomplished that through the sweat of his brow and faith in God. When Bill Gates is delivered from hard times, duh. When poor, broke John Smith gets delivered from hard times, that's something to boast about. But God not being a respecter of persons goes both ways. Verse 10 says, "And those who are rich should boast that God has humbled them. They will fade away like a little flower in the field. The hot sun rises and the grass withers. The little flower droops and falls, and its beauty fades away. In the same way, the rich will fade away with all of their achievements." It's kind of a dark thing for God to tell you to be happy about, but I think this is sometimes why experts don't particularly think highly of religion. And in some ways, I must admit, it's hard to blame them. These are hard commandments you are given. That if you are rich and powerful, that what you should be boastful about, what you should be proud of, is the fact that God has reminded you that you are ultimately meaningless in the grand course of history. That's kind of a hard thing to put as like your biggest life accomplishment. Good news, guys. I ultimately don't mean anything. They won't remember me in 100 years. Yay! It's it's not exactly a nice feeling. But on the other hand, I think we might sometimes take it wrong when God compares us to small, insignificant in our eyes kind of things. Like the little flower that droops and falls and fades away. Because friendly reminder that God cares intimately about that little flower. That he put a lot of work into creating it in the first place. That he watched it grow and he watches it fade away. And it's not necessarily an insult when God compares you to the rest of his creation. Because we know he's rather fond of this old universe he's built. I think that plays a lot into why he is upset by sin so much. Because he made a perfectly good universe for us and we just insist on messing it up. It would annoy me. So I think that is very much so something for a rich man to boast about if he has the chance to. If he is humble and understands that all his worldly gains and achievements ultimately don't amount to a pile of beans. And I'm just quoting Casablanca now for some reason in the grand course of history. A dour note, but sometimes sermons need to be. Verse 12, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. As true as everything I've just said is, the real point is our reward isn't in this life. As great as it is that we can call on God to help us endure our current trials and tribulations, it's really the after that we have our true hope in. And remember, when you are being tempted, do not say, God is tempting me. God is never tempted to do wrong, and he never tempts anyone else. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. And that, on the surface, seems contradictory to what we just read earlier. The idea that God doesn't tempt you, after James specifically says that sore trials are a blessing. So how to reconcile the two? I think you do that by drawing a distinction between trials and temptations. I think there's a big difference between, how to word it? I think there's a big difference between being down on your luck and being tempted to steal because you're down on your luck. I think being poor and out of money is typically not sent to you by God. Although I suppose if you really want to play the blame game, you can blame him for making an imperfect universe, at which point he will point out that he didn't, and we're the ones who messed it up. I would not get in an arguing match with God. Ask Job how well that goes. He's a very sarcastic God at times. But this idea that temptation is not from God, that it is our own doing. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Especially in a culture that has been influenced to some extent by Eastern religion, or even more traditional Western views of the world, where conflict between good and evil, light and dark, equal opponent against equal opponent. But as the Trailer Park Troubadours say, the devil gets a lot more credit than he probably deserves. I sometimes wonder how much lasting damage has been done by books like Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno. Even though the authors did not intend as much, I believe, if I remember correctly, Paradise Lost. What did I say? Did I say Paradise Lost?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought I said the name of a Star Trek episode. Paradise Lost is just, best I can tell, just a poem for the sake of it. Dante's Inferno is a political hit piece against a particular governor that the guy really didn't like back in medieval age. But I think the idea of some great fallen angel to oppose God directly is mostly absent from the Bible. I won't say there are no verses that can be interpreted that way, but I personally don't think we need the help. Just in my own life experience, I don't really need any great big dark lord boogeyman to get me in trouble. Perfectly capable of doing it myself. And I think that's kind of what Jesus is going for here. That temptation more often than not is not an outside force, but is an internal one, I should say. And that although trials can come from God to make us strong, that sometimes we are given challenges to overcome, the temptation to take the easy way out of those trials are not divine in any way, shape, or form. I think it is possible that, not even possible, likely, that God does mess us up, as it were, sometimes, because you only become stronger through hard times. It's the old saying that strong men make for peaceful times in a country, peaceful times make weak men, and weak men make hard times for a country. It is only through the unfortunate thing that especially modern people don't like to admit is that life kind of needs to be difficult for people to grow in any meaningful way. And that people kind of need to grow because life is going to be difficult. It may not be now, but it will be later, and you have to be prepared for that. It's a cycle, the circle of life. We're on to Lion King. We've moved on from Casablanca. So, although the hard times and trials can come from heaven when they need to, the temptation to fail those trials, as it were, and I don't mean fail because you had no other choice. If you are broke, you are broke. It is not a failure if you give 100% and still fall short. It is a failure in the strictest sense, but at the very least you have learned something. You have grown stronger because of it. If you come out on the other side in one piece, you may have done something stupid, you may have kerfuffled it all, but you didn't fail in a true sense. You only fail if you give into that baser instinct to cheat, as it were. Whatever that means, if it means stealing or murder or lying, whatever it may be, that's the only way you can really fail, by giving into the temptations of your own heart to do things the easy way, because that gives birth to sinful actions. And when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. Which is contrasted as we move further along to verse 16. So don't be misled, my dear brothers and sisters. Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow. He chose to give birth to us by giving us his true word, and we, out of all creation, became his prized possession. That wonderful, warm, fuzzy feeling to know that you are liked by someone is something we should all try our best to retain in our hearts. Because, as for lack of a better word, as sassy as God can get, as thoroughly fed up as he can sometimes be with human shenanigans, we're his favorite, which is mind-boggling to me. You ever just kind of, I don't know, get up in the Sierra Mountains early in the morning, look out at that nice blue lake we have over there, and those ridiculously majestic mountains and the stars fading away in the sky, and going, you sure, God? So humans really don't seem like the best work you've done. I don't see a lot of trees messing things up around here. Fire's notwithstanding. Still humans' fault anyways. It's every good thing a gift from God. The word gift there having more than a few meanings. Because of course the part of that we want to focus on, just naturally, instinctively, is that God loves us and He has given us stuff, and that's great. And it is. But I think the deeper implication of a gift is that you did not earn that it was not given to you because you deserve it, and in fact you are now in debt. Maybe not officially, but you know that feeling when someone buys something nice for you, and it is human response to immediately go, well, I gotta do something nice for them. So it's not debt as in a landlord about to kick you out of your house, but just when people do nice things for you, you feel like doing something nice for them. And in a way, that's Christianity, just on a much larger scale. That someone has given you not only the big one, not only a free get-out-of-jail-card ticket to heaven, as much as we should remember and focus on that one, but every good thing, every nice little pleasant smell of cinnamon rolls cooking to a smile from a friend, every nice thing came from God. My gosh, you'll never be able to pay off that debt. But it sure is our commandment to do our best. And at the end of the day, that's not much of a commandment, because the only rational response to someone being that nice to you is to do your best. When someone goes above and beyond to pick you up from the airport at midnight, you generally don't respond to him by kicking him in the shins. Well, I probably would, but that's how I show affection. It's not important right now. The point is, it's not even... When we say those big scary words like laws and commandments, it's not necessarily something like a legal contract. It's just the morally right thing to do. I know, what a silly thing for a religion to expect of you. It's a commandment, in the sappiest terms possible, of love. A contract signed, bought, and paid for by God's good grace, and us doing our feeble human best to repay Him for it. I think we'll just close out the chapter real quick here. Can I get the next slide? Because I don't remember which verses I skipped over. Okay, verse 19. Understanding this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. So get rid of all filth and evil in your lives, and humbly accept the word of God has planted in your hearts, for it has the power to save your souls. But don't just listen to God's word. You must do what it says. Otherwise, you are only fooling yourselves. For if you listen to the word and don't obey, it is like glancing at your face in a mirror. You see yourself, walk away, and forget what you look like. But if you look carefully into that perfect law that sets you free, and if you do what it says and don't forget what you heard, then God will bless you for doing it. A more personal example from that, as a slightly OCD person, just listening to God's word and not actually doing it is like locking the door and then having to immediately turn around 30 seconds later and pull on it to make sure it's locked, instead of just doing that when you locked it in the first place. Just that little tick in the back of your mind that, did I really do that? I don't know how many of you can actually relate to that, but it's the way my brain operates. It's, the gist is that through God's word and His commandments, we see ourselves for what we really are, which may not always be a pretty picture. But that if all we listen to, if all we do is listen, then it's like just glancing at your own reflection. That you so quickly turn away and forget it all. You can come to church every Sunday for your entire life, and if that's the only commitment you make to God, sure don't do a lot of good. Because great, congratulations. You know you're a sinner, and you have done nothing with that information. You have realized and understood that you are in incredible debt to God himself, and have gone, man, because you don't remember something if you do it only once a week. You can't show someone some kind of complicated task once a week or month and then expect them to remember how to do that. You can't expect to remember what something, even your own face, looks like unless you take the time to study it and really breathe it in, as it were. And the same goes for God and his commandments. If all you do is sit around studying the Bible, you missed the point. And you won't really understand what it is he did for you. You can't really grasp what sacrifice is if you don't do it yourself. If you've never put yourself out there for someone else, if you've never taken time or energy or effort or money or whatever out of your own life to help someone else, you don't get what God did for you. And even then, it's such a small thing to go off of. Even just, we'll just go extreme and just shame the entire human race. Even taking a bullet for someone is so far below what Christ did. Because Christ took that bullet for you, and the guy you were protecting, and the guy with the gun in the first place, and a couple billion other people. We stand in debt, but to a great debt collector who says, all that I ask is that you help me, even though I don't really need it, but you need something to do, to help me with to share this kind of love and gift with other people. To see and understand that you have been blessed so incredibly, even in a hard, broken, poor life, and to share that love with other people, to give them the clue they need to start headed towards God, so they can understand what he's done for them, so they can share it, and it just keeps snowballing. And I think I just explained religion. Cool. Wondered if I could do that. That about wraps us up for today. Next week I intend to be preachifying on Rahab, of all people, but if James references her, so can I. An absolutely fascinating character in the Bible. Do we have any need of particular urgency and need of prayer before we dismiss this morning? All right, then, would Jane pray us out and bless our lunch?
Thank you for the good sermon and bringing us all here today. I pray that you keep your hand on us and keep us safe on the way home and bring us back to the appointed time. Amen.